Ask Reddit, therapists of Reddit, what was your biggest, I know I'm not supposed to judge you but holy SHT moment? 1. Once had a patient whose wife shook their baby to death. He wanted help reconnecting with his wife. At the time I was a young father of a newborn myself, and he triggered a lot of fear in me for my own child, a deep loathing of his spouse, and pity, how pathetic, kind, for the patient. I tried for 3 sessions, met his spouse and everything before handing the case over to my supervisor, who knew about my initial reactions, and tried to help me through it. Unfortunately, it ended up being more about my feelings than his, and I was new to the profession at the time. These things are expected to crop up from time to time, but I was still taken aback by my own reactions. 2. I do acute pediatric inpatient behavioral therapy, has never happened with a child, and never will. Parents on the other hand can be real pieces of shit, and the way they treat/abuse their children then throw them off on us and scream fix them. I'm a big burly guy and I've cried many nights over this. 3. I was once in my psychiatrist's office, a bi-monthly, 15 minutes med check. She asked me what was going on, more as conversation. I told her that in the last 6 weeks, my 3 elders, aunt and 2 uncles, I was guardian/conservator for had died, one right after the other. My wife had a heart attack. My daughter attempted suicide. And my mom broke her hip and had laid on her floor for a week before being found. She drank and ate from the dog's bowls. I got that call within 10 minutes of setting up the last funeral. She stopped the meeting, got on the phone with a therapist in the office next to her and had her postpone her next meeting to speak with me. I was so ed up, I had no idea. I think she saved my life. 4. Lots of people discussing pedophilia as an example of the toughest stuff to not judge despite our training. I haven't yet treated a pedophile, thankfully. At least not an identified one. I did run a men's anger management group though, and some of those men had done some terrible things to women. Most of them I found ways to like and admire for their positive aspects, but there were 2 guys in that group I just could never find unconditional positive regard for. One guy basically never spoke in group. He would give one-word answers and occasionally just discuss how unfair the system was to him. I worked really hard to open him up and find things to connect over, but he never opened up to me or the group. He left the group after he strangled his girlfriend and went to jail. She survived, thankfully. The other left group early routinely, showed up late, participated minimally and similarly never wanted to open up honestly. He left early one group after we had discussed him staying to the end and threatened me when I told him he wasn't going to get credit for attendance, something the court required. Oddly, I eventually moved into the apartment below him, completely without knowledge, and listened to him scream at his girlfriend and break shit while I called the cops. I judge these men. They're shitty. Maybe they're redeemable, but redemption requires self-exploration and they both refused to do so. It's worth noting how differently I felt about them than so many others in the group, men I found ways to help and admire and respect even in spite of their awful behavior in the past. 5. Here's my most recent one. As the pandemic worsened here in the US and more lockdowns are on their way, one of my most extroverted clients and I brainstormed ways to meet her social needs while remaining safe. The following week she canceled her session and told me that she's positive for COVID after attending an orgy, which definitely wasn't one of our ideas. I let out the deepest, most defeated sigh after I hung up the phone. 6. I joined in a review of a secluded patient and he threw a cup of wee and poo in my face when we opened the door. I tried to be objective about his experience, but I just thought, what a cunt. I work in inpatient services so it can be hard to challenge myself at times. Individuals with diagnosis of personality disorder, for example, can do things that in isolation make you think they're just being bratty or manipulative. But to think of the experiences that shaped them to react like that in a given situation can help to clear my judgment and find compassion. Harder when someone bites me or hits me with one of our fabulously detachable anti-ligature curtain poles, though. 7. I work with youth and adolescents who have anxiety, trauma, and/or depression. Some of the kids I worked with had some pretty severe attachment issues. Regardless of this, I never thought I'd have to seriously explain: 1. You can't just buy a straitjacket for your kid. 2. Feeding your kid ultra-spicy ramen each night instead of the meal everyone else is eating isn't specifically defined as abuse. But you have to understand the emotional abuse that this causes. 3. Your kid isn't trying to kill you because they stand in your doorway at night crying. That's likely because they're scared of their traumatic nightmares, but feel like you will just yell at them if they wake you up. Edit 2. Thank you all for your questions and support. This case has really helped to shape my approach to therapy, and has highlighted the importance of healthy communication between parents and kids. My number 1 tip: don't let someone else tell you how you feel/think. If someone says, "You're angry with me," or something to that effect, ask yourself if you really are. If you're not actually angry, then don't spend a second more on it. A lot of kids/family members get hung up on trying to justify their own actions according to someone else's perception.